Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today on the show, we've got our good friend Danielle. How you doing, Danielle?
Great to be here. Thanks, Jerry. I'm doing well.
It's great to have you. I guess I haven't seen you since one of the last services of Unity, right before the shutdown in March, huh?
Yeah, that shut me down for coming into that neighborhood just
Yeah,
because I live in Portland, which is a good ways out from Lansing.
yeah. So I'm excited to have you on the show. I think we've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump into it. Would you mind telling us about yourself and your projects that you're working on?
I'd be glad to.
All
So,
right.
about myself, I was born in South Central Illinois, and I lived there until I was about 7 years old. And then we moved to upstate New York. And I lived there until I was about 13 years old. And then I ended up going to a private girls' boarding school for a year because of some odd circumstances in my life. So then I was in Virginia. From there, I moved to Kentucky. And I graduated high school in Kentucky, in Lexington, Kentucky, from Henry Clay High School.
All right.
And then I decided I did not want to go to college, much to my father's chagrin. And he said, if I went right out of high school, he'd pay for it. And if I waited, he wouldn't. So I ended up paying my own way through college a few years later, back when it was actually kind of affordable to do.
Mhm.
And I have a Bachelor of Science from the University of Kentucky in agronomy, which is crops and soil sciences. From there, I became a horseshoer, and I have just retired from horseshoeing. I spent 36 years in that trade. So I had a great time with that for the most part. And here I am needing to reinvent myself. So that's a brief background.
So does South Central Illinois mean like Peoria?
Champaign? Near
Champaign. Okay.
Champaign, probably.
Okay.
Little bitty towns.
Yeah. I used to work with the American Red Cross down in that area. So I
Okay.
kind of know it, but not that well. Not that well.
Not a lot
So
there.
um horseshoeing. That, I bet you on the surface to most people it seems really simple, but I bet you it's really complicated too, right? I mean, are you also kind of a vet when you're doing that?
Well, there is a specialty now in veterinary school, which there wasn't when I started of podiatry. So they can go into that aspect of it. But it's actually an unregulated trade. Like you can buy your tools and say you're a horseshoer. There's no certification required or any of that sort of thing. It's very physically demanding work.
Yeah.
Like you got to know a little something about horses to keep yourself safe. And you got to know a little something about physiology and anatomy of the foot. So yeah, you got to know how it affects the horse's total being, what you're doing with their foot. Yeah, so it's a very challenging trade, and a lot of people said, "You're so small." I'm like, I'm closer to my work, right?
Well, yep, I get it. But that's, I'm sort of thinking that same thing. I'm thinking the opposite. The horse is so big. I mean, so many times I get around the big horse and it's pretty intimidating, how big they are.
So for me, it it's hindsight, it's retrospect. When you start putting your life together, when you've lived as long as I have, that my first experience of personal peace was on a horse. When I look back at it now, and I got thrown up on a horse when I was 6 or 7 years old. Just some friends had us over to dinner. They had a horse. We were going out to the barn. It must have been a dairy farm, and they were making ice cream. Like, this was a great day, right? We're visiting with friends and we're having homemade ice cream right from the cow. And And they threw me up on this horse and were just leading me across the pasture on it. And oh my God, Jerry, it was the best, right? I felt like I was flying, but I was totally grounded on this big, powerful animal. And it was just that did it. I was for it. I was a horse person for the rest of my life.
I do enjoy riding horses and all that. So I didn't mean to say like I was scared of them, but
they are very large.
yeah.
Yeah.
So so you've been an entrepreneur for 36 years, right? Was
Yeah,
that
I
your
kind of say
own?
that I was a solopreneur before solopreneur was a thing, right? Because I'm not really an entrepreneur. I didn't employ people. I didn't do all of that aspect of business. I just was in a skilled trade. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. I would probably give you credit for being an entrepreneur though, because, you were taking the resource and the skills that you had and creating a livelihood out of them. Or at least I'm assuming that's what you did. And yeah.
I did. And it was very flexible. It was great when I got married and had kids and had small accounts. I could, if my kids were sick, they understood that my kids were sick. If their kids were sick, I understood their kids were sick. Family comes first. And so it was a great career for me in many ways. But about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I don't know, a while ago, I got critically injured. I did get kicked in the head and stepped on and had a flail chest injury, which is, they can't count how many ribs you broke. So I was in ICU for 18 days. And when I came back out of that, I thought, well, I should probably reinvent myself now, right? This would be a good time. But I didn't want to be stopped by fear either. So I kept on shoeing. It was a year before I really went back to shoeing. But I did that. And I also started pursuing some other things, which led to personal development and led to what am I going to do next with my life, and led to being at peace with not knowing what's next. Right. And those were skills I'd gathered along the way in a lot of different ways. And it wasn't until my dad passed about 3 years ago, and I had the distinct honor of being there to help him in his journey. He was diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer. It had turned into bone cancer, which is terribly painful. And it was probably the most challenging thing I'd done up to that point in my life, was to be there with him and for him and let him have his own journey and have my own emotions about it and walk through that whole thing. And that was the gift of my dad's passing that I could have never predicted, was that when I look back over that, I used all these tools that I'd learned from being a recovering addict, from being injured like that, critically injured, from all of the experiences being a mom, being, they're not all bad, but they're all challenges that you learn to get through. And then at some point you look back over your life and you're like, wow, I learned a lot. I know a lot. I know a lot of things that a lot of people can benefit from. So even though I view myself as just a garden variety person, I still feel like there's so much that we're not taught. We're not taught how to be in peace. We're not taught how to deal with our emotions productively. We're not taught how to speak kindly to ourselves, to love ourselves, to care for ourselves. Those aren't in our education system, right?
No, they are not.
So somebody has to teach them. Why not me?
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about what your vision is there, and how you're going to do that?
So my vision at that point was, once my dad passed and I started putting these things together, and that I knew that I enjoyed speaking, was I'm going to be a speaker and I'm going to tell my story, and people are going to be able to relate to that. And it'll be so simple because it's just my story.
Yeah.
But it's not quite that simple. I did go to a speaker training, and I developed some of the skills that I need to do public speaking, professional speaking. And then I went to another training a couple years later, and I got my speaker reel, and I've got all the marketing things I thought were going to all be tied up in a neat little bow. That didn't quite turn out that way. And then COVID hit, so we're not doing a whole lot of stages, public gatherings. So
Yeah, no.
now we got to learn technology, and I'm starting to put that all together, where I have developed a course in pursuing personal peace. I don't actually have it posted on my public figure page on Facebook, but I do have a public figure page, and I've been doing peaceful pauses, just like 3, 5, 10-minute talks on personal peace for the past year. So I've gotten some visibility, and I've gotten a little bit of comfort, but I still get nervous when I'm talking to people about it, because it means so much to me that people learn to be at peace. I honestly believe that no larger peace is possible if we don't start learning how to be peaceful with ourselves.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It's a mindset that we've got to change here, and we need all of us to be in that mindset, I guess.
We do, and everybody has a different part in doing it, you know. And when I started watching some of your podcasts, I'm like, don't get into comparison. Your gift is your gift, right? It's important. And there's so many people doing so many great things that you're interviewing, and you're giving them time. And I think that's just miraculous. It is that you have made this dedication to every damn day. I'm going to interview somebody. I'm going to help somebody. I'm going to encourage somebody. That's a great thing.
Well, thank you. I did mean to make a comment when you talked about your experience with your father and his end of life. That first of all, sorry about that, but I don't know, if that's really the phrase. I was starting to trip up. Like, do I really say that? Because you were talking about what a gift it was, too, and it reminds me of some of the work like Megan Miller's doing. I interviewed her before with Creative Dying, and the preparation for death that all of us should do a lot sooner than 2 days before or whatever.
Right.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to ask you was pursuing personal peace on Facebook, right?
Yes.
And I spelled peace wrong. So.
And that's great, because what I say is peace occurs piece by piece, right? So it's whatever spelling you want to use.
Well, I fixed it before I posted it. But can definitely look up Danielle on Facebook and the Pursuing Personal Peace. But let's go back to that. Whenever I name something or I'm doing something, I really analyze the words. And pursuing and personal, I'm going to skip over a little bit. But let's talk about the word peace. What is that word? What does that mean?
And personal peace, I have to put them together.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's all I can really talk about. I don't have any training in bigger peace. I only have personal peace to talk about. For me, means being able to be entirely present in the moment, to be in gratitude and joy for it, not being clouded by the things that have happened in your past, not being concerned about the things that are going to happen in your future, but to actually be present and be content.
So you slipped something in on me in the story earlier. You used the word addiction. And I know a lot about substance use disorder and about not being present, right? Even when I have a drink here and there and not being present. This is going back a long way for you.
Absolutely. This was a really transformational year for me. I turned 60 and I turned 30 years clean.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah. So there were a lot of things about my former life that I gave up as I'm retiring, and I became an empty nester, and lots of changes this year for me, outside of all the big changes that we're dealing with, that everybody's dealing with. And to an extent that didn't affect me um, in the same way I think that it affected a lot of people, because I have a part-time job as a cashier and I'm essential. So my job didn't change much. My home life didn't change much because I live on a horse farm and I have horses to take care of and chores to do regardless, right? I'm out in it every day. It keeps me active. I love it. I feel so blessed and so grateful to be here and to have all of my family still here with me. I lost my dad several years ago to cancer. It has nothing to do with that, right? So this year I've lost some people, but they're not in my immediate family.
Well, sorry for the loss of the people too. Um, as I know personal peace is part of the mission. How would you sum up what the mission is? What your mission is? Like, why are you doing this?
And I just wrote this for somebody. Now I won't be able to remember it, but my mission is piece by piece to bring peace to this world. I do want to bring a greater peace, but I don't think it's possible until we learn to live in peace with ourselves. And I do feel an urgency about it because I'm a very inquisitive person. I enjoy learning and growing. And I've listened to a few scientists that are saying, if we don't figure this out, that we're not in competition with one another, that it's not about survival of the fittest, and we don't start working together in peace, that our species could be extinct in as little as 100 years.
Yeah.
So there's an urgency behind it for me. Like, I don't want to see people go extinct.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that either.
Right.
So at the Fledge, we use biomimicry, where we study what nature does, and then we try to mimic what nature does as like part of our processes, if you will. And one of the things that we learned in those studies is that the species that survive the longest aren't the ones that are the biggest or the fastest or the slowest or the smallest or whatever. It's the ones that have the most symbiotic relationships around them, the ones that work together, not
That
compete.
absolutely makes sense to me, and is in very much in agreement with the things that I've heard, that if we learn to do that, we've got a bright future.
Yeah. I agree with that. They taught us so long ago that there's a little bitty pie that we're all competing over. And to me, the pie is infinite. It is abundant.
Yeah, and it's such a different mindset. But even when I was a college student and I took rural economics or something like that, I'm like, they're making all this stuff up. They tell you they're making it up. Like we say is allocation of scarce resources, whatever, but we make them scarce. That's what makes them valuable. Okay. So it's all made up. It's all smoke and mirrors, really.
It sure is.
And a lot of my course that I offer on pursuing personal peace is based on a book by Dr. Stan Allen called Questing for Peace and Productivity by Way of the Horse Whisperer.
Oh,
so
nice.
I was trained in horse whispering by him. He was a 4th generation horse whisperer. He just passed a couple years ago too. And if you take those principles of horse whispering, of mutual respect and listening and understanding how that animal communicates, and finding a language that works for both of you and that allows you to be who you are and not who they are, but have respect for who they are, then you can take those same principles into how people interact with one another. And so it's largely based on whispering. So eventually I'd like to be known as a people whisperer, actually.
That sounds nice. Um, you you were saying the phrase, and I'm going to get it wrong. Sorry, so I'm going to paraphrase. Um, that you're okay with not knowing what's going to happen. And I know that a lot of people, they worry about stuff that's never going to happen, and they spend a lot of time and energy not being at peace. How do you get to that point? How do you think? I mean, maybe that's too big of a question, but
it is what I'm doing largely, and it's piece by piece. That's why I said it's piece by piece that you learn to be in peace. That when you've been through enough difficult situations and you have just gotten through them on faith, and you've shown a strength that you didn't know you had, and you came out way better than you could have imagined, the more times you experience that, the easier it is to just be okay. You don't know what's going to happen. It might be way worse. It might be way better than what you imagine. So if you spend a lot of time focused on what it is that you don't want to happen, you'll bring that in. Stop it. Stop it.
yeah. I always tell
Your
people,
peace will be from focusing on what you do want to see happen.
yeah. I always tell people it's never as bad as it seems, and it's never as good as it seems. I mean,
And the pain, the anticipation of pain is often worse than the pain.
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We spend more time in that. And the same thing with things that have happened in the past. The story you tell yourself happens over and over again, right? But what happened only happened once.
Yeah. I often wake up in the middle of the night fearing where my other two children are, all related to the death of my daughter, who I think you know that she died of a fentanyl overdose a few years ago. And I just, that trigger, just whatever it is, it wakes me up, and I can't stop worrying about where they are.
And the other thing that comes of that, Jerry, is that you're doing so much good in the world because of that.
Yeah.
Right? That is the driving force of who you are. And I almost said, and I forgot to say it earlier, that there might be a trigger warning in this, that my name's Danielle and I'm a recovering addict. And sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's not, that didn't trigger me. I embrace that as serendipity.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. And you know, it's I don't know, but I love
it's something that you have turned around and made a positive force. Yes, you're always going to grieve her. You're always going to miss her, and you're always going to be concerned for your children because that has happened in your life. And I know people, like, I've lost a parent. Almost everybody's going to lose a parent, but losing a child is significantly different.
Yeah.
That's significantly different.
And you reminded me what I was going to say when you were telling the story of your father, and you were talking about the gifts that you were given in that process. I completely understood it, because you're right. Daniela walks next to me every time I hand out Narcan, every time I'm giving somebody a safe needle, even though that triggers me really bad. I still know that it's the best thing for that person at the moment. And I know that she's there.
And I think those are the things that we have to get to, the point that, you know, in personal peace, you have to know that you're lovable regardless of where you are in your life, what you've done up to this point in your life. You are lovable. You're loved. I can't even put it into words. You just have to know that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. You know, the God that I embrace, and I used to really have an issue with that name, but I've gotten past it through the course of my recovery, actually. Loves us all the same and can't love us any more for what we do or what we don't do. You know, as much as we love our children, more God loves us. So if you're a parent, you know what that means.
Yeah. Um, we're at the part of the show where I'm going to ask you what's something you do every damn day. And I got excited about you telling us the mission and all of that. So I expounded a little bit, but what's something you do every damn day to make that piece by piece happen?
So my story is a little bit like the tortoise and the hare, and I'm the tortoise, right? So I'm going to win in the end. I know that, but I'm really slow at learning things and implementing things into my life. So one of the things that I do every day is when I open my eyes in the morning and I get out of bed, I say, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that my eyes opened, that all my other senses seem to function, that I have a home, that I'm able to walk down the stairs. And that whole attitude of gratitude starts my day off in that, it just starts it off right. And there's always, always, always something to be grateful for. And then I drink my water, which has been a long time coming. I've been horrible about drinking water. I've known it for years. Like I would drink just plain coffee. That's it. If I didn't keep track of myself. So I've gotten where I drink my water first thing in the morning because water's essential to your health. And there's a book, I haven't read it, but I've heard the title so many times that I believe it now, right? It's You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty.
Oh, wow.
So attitude of gratitude, drink my water, spend my time with that thing that don't have words for, that love, that higher self, that's how I start my day every damn day.
There was, I want to talk about that gratitude for a second. There was a time shortly after the Fledge moved to Lansing from Grand Ledge where we had been shot at. Somebody tried to stab me and cut the back of my coat. There were some kids that were in a really dangerous situation that I couldn't do anything about, and I had the police involved. And I was just trauma after trauma after trauma, just kind of triggering me. And I was scared that I was just not going to be able to handle it anymore. And the community police officer got me in touch with the police psychologist. And I had maybe 2 1-hour sessions with her just on the phone. And the number one thing that she told me that helped me was say thank you to everything around you. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Thank you, Danielle, for being my guest. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Shoes, for keeping and just to express that gratitude until that trauma starts to dissolve. And that really did work for me. And then what you said, I just read the other day, someone saying that very same thing. The first thing they do in the morning is open their eyes and say thank you. Mm-hmm. So the attitude of gratitude.
And water.
And water. And water that attitude.
Because that's the thing. I mean, we are physical beings and emotional and mental and spiritual, and we got to take care of all those aspects. You can't just say it's one. Like we got to integrate them all and take care of them all.
Yeah. So yesterday on the show, my show got, she lost internet connection and it got truncated. But we did get to your question and our part of our preparation. And the question that she wants to ask you, which we might actually have answered a lot of, but, is there something in your background that brought you to this spot of what you want to do? And I sort of feel like we answered that.
Yeah, there absolutely is. When I got clean at age 30, I spent, I don't know how long in counseling with a community mental health person. Like I didn't have insurance. I didn't go to treatment. I just went to meetings and I went to my therapy. And Um, I didn't pay a whole lot for it, but I had a great therapist who walked me through this process and helped me remember when I started having body memories of being abused when I was really little by a babysitter's son. So it wasn't in my family and it wasn't something that was ongoing. I didn't remember it, but I had this subconscious driver that I wasn't worthy of protection. I wasn't worthy of whatever. Right. So thank God for community mental health and their sliding scale and being able to have that available to me. And that's what begins to fuel that give back. When you know that you didn't know why you were behaving the way you were behaving. You didn't know what you didn't know. And so many people are doing things they don't want to do and behaving in ways they don't want to behave, and they don't know why, and they don't know how to get to it. But it's possible to love yourself exactly as you are and exactly where you are, and to extend yourself some grace and some forgiveness, and to develop that attitude of gratitude. All of those things, one little piece at a time. First, I got clean, and then I recovered from the um, rape that I remembered, and then I recovered from being molested that I didn't remember, and then it's a process that I just feel like people need to know it's possible. Personal peace is possible. Loving yourself imperfectly is possible. And then we can do that with others.
So there's been a serendipity moment again, as you were talking about the answer there. The person who asked the question, Lakeisha, is doing grace in a case, and you just used that term grace. But really, I could have used that word lovable yesterday, because her mission is to help kids in the foster system not have to carry their life around in a trash bag. One, because trash bags aren't reliable, but two, doesn't that suck to just put everything in a trash bag and my life is trash and I'm going from one place to another? And kids need to know, everybody needs to know that they're lovable.
Absolutely.
So you ready to ask Mark a question? That's who's going to be on the show tomorrow. And he's a software developer. And we're going to talk about Fledge coin and the use of Fledge coin within the Fledge community.
So I'm not big on that software technology in general. I've heard the term cryptocurrency. I don't know exactly what all the different ones are being developed for, but I'm interested to find out. What I'm interested in finding out from him is, what does he believe the state of our current currency is, our national currency? How is that going to be affected by all this cryptocurrency type thing?
All right. And I always turn it around on the guest. And I do want to make a comment before I do that. You're one of the few guests that showed up. You've already tried StreamYard. You've got your headset on. You knew about having a landline would be, maybe better than the wireless or the hotspot. So I think you're getting it. Don't
Piece
let
by
people,
piece.
yeah, piece by piece. Don't let yourself or anybody else tell you can't handle technology, because you're already showing you got what it takes because you're learning. And piece by piece is great. So my question to you is, what do you think is going to happen to our current currency?
Yeah, we did cover that a little, didn't we? Talk about it being all smoke and mirrors. I don't see how there's any true value to it. And that makes it a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say fear, but I suppose that's right. False evidence appearing real, right? That it could just crash and it could cause all kinds of issues in the country. And I'm just going to walk it out in my peace. I'm just going to be at peace with not knowing when or if that's going to happen or what's going to replace it. Or, I see a lot of sustainability coming out of this year when people started to understand that you might not always be able to walk into the grocery store and get everything you need. And if you can, it might not always be safe. So I'm hopeful that we do a little more bartering and we do a little more sustainability and we learn how to be cooperative.
And you're basically answering the reasons we're doing Fledge Coin, and you're right in line with it. So I will pass that question on to Mark. And this has been peaceful, actually.
Good.
And I don't mean I don't always say that at the end of the show, but I feel like you brought me to a place where I'm a little bit more at peace, just by what you and I have been talking about. So I think you're going to be a hell of a speaker for pursuing personal peace. Oh, you know what we forgot? You wrote something in a book.
Oh, yeah, I did.
We should talk about that for a second.
Yeah, because when I started to be a speaker, and I've talked to a few speakers, they're like, so what else do you do? What are your credentials? Where have you been? I'm like, I haven't been anywhere. I haven't done anything. I just have this life that has taught me so much. And it is because I have that inquisitive growth mindset. And I know that's a big part of it. But so, yeah, I have a coaching course, and I just came up with a title for myself as a peace coach. And that sort of fell in with one of the women from my speaker training was going to do a summit. So I was like, oh, I'll be on the summit. That'd be great. And she's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're going to do a book instead. Okay, I'll write a chapter for the book. So I wrote the chapter for the book, and she put it together. It's a collaboration of 14 authors, and it's called Fiercely Faithful, Find True Purpose and Live a Miraculous Life. So it was great fit for me, and it launched on December 15th as an ebook and went bestseller in 5 countries. So Pretty exciting stuff.
Well, there's your credentials right there.
So yes, I was hoping to speak in Branson in February for the launch of the paperback book, and that got postponed because COVID fears and whatnot. We had it set up where we could do it, but I think people still are very concerned about traveling and staying away from home and being at a gathering. So hopefully we'll do it later in the year.
Well, I'd like to make a comment about your credentials. I would think that all of the milestones that you've laid out for us in your story today definitely are things that have been challenging and make you worry and make you remember and do all the things that you're trying to teach people not to do. So I think you have credentials, and I'll even reiterate what I was saying at the end there. I feel at peace more just talking about this subject and talking about these things than I did before. And
I'm so grateful.
So I don't know, I owe you $50 or something. Maybe you coached me into peacing.
Oh, I think I can probably tap your brain about something. We'll
barter. Okay. So I didn't prepare you for everything. What would you like to take us out with? Do you have, should we look for the book and buy the book? Are you having any events? Is there anything you want to say that just to leave us with?
What I have found in doing the peaceful pauses on my Pursuing Personal Peace page is it would be great to have feedback. I put them out there. I know that people watch them. I know that people enjoy them. But if you watch any of my videos that have been on there for the last year or any that are coming up and would comment on them so that I know people are out there, That would be great.
And that's called Personal Pauses? Is that
Pursuing Personal Peace is the Facebook
Uh-huh.
page, and it's a public figure page or something. But if you go to my profile, and my profile is public, and you can go directly to it. Just hit the Pursuing Personal Peace line, and it'll take you to that page. And then, yeah, the weekly thing is called a Peaceful Pause, and pretty much that's all that's on there.
Okay. All right. We're going to give you some feedback.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you for being on the show. Your story is phenomenal to me. I've never met somebody that did horseshoeing for their living. Or I don't think I guess I might have, because I met you and I would have said that unless you told me that. So I might have met them. Told you we were going to stutter here in a bit. But thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for having such a wonderful mission. And yeah.
And thank you for all you do and for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So everyone, stay tuned for every day at 2 p.m. And we will see you later. Thank you again. Bye-bye.